92.1 WROI, WROI-FM.com. We are streaming audio live, RTC Channel 5, and soon on RTC Channel 4. You'll be able to tune in and see John Alley and myself doing the Woodlawn Hospital Report. So I always say good morning to Scott.
Good morning.
And Scott is in the studio this morning. And of course, if you download that TuneIn Radio app, you can take us wherever you're going. And we hope that you do that. 83 degrees outside the window on 8th Street. And John Alley, we finally got some good weather going on.
Finally got some dry weather for a change. Now
That's
I think
right.
the heat's here. So, just remind folks, if you're going to be out working in the heat, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. It's very easy to get a little overheated, and we don't want to see you by accident in the ER. So make sure you keep well hydrated. You start feeling a little warm, woozy out there in the heat. Cool down. Whatever you're working on can always wait. Get to it later.
And water is probably just the key to the whole thing, isn't it?
It's just basically replace the,
Right.
the moisture in your body. And,
Right.
and one of the things, as you know, every now and then I encounter some track days in a race car. And one of the things we found there is a good mixture is a 2-to-1. So for each 2 bottles of water you drink, maybe 1 bottle of the Gatorade type of material to get some of that nutrients back in. Don't just do all water. Don't just do all Gatorade. Do about a 2-to-1 split, and what I found over time is I feel much better by keeping that type of a ratio. So keep that in mind. Hydrate out there, folks, because this hot weather, even the minor job in the yard, you can become overcome with heat very quickly. So watch for the signs, and if you start thinking you're too hot, you probably are.
Well, we're talking about that, and we will get to the Woodlawn report here
Yeah.
momentarily. But while we're talking about that, I noted at the Brickyard 400, you mentioned the track last Sunday. A couple of things were going on. One, the cars evidently riding a little lower so that the drivers were getting a little more heated, but the track temperature considerably higher than sitting in the crowd.
Absolutely. That asphalt is like a heat magnet. I mean, it really takes that heat that comes in, and the ambient temperature might be in the 80s or 90s. That track temperature could be 100 degrees. Then you add that motor heat coming off from that car, because there's not a lot of insulation in those vehicles because they're concerned with weight. And, I think I was watching one of the newscasts, and it was 150 degrees inside one of the cars. And now they're inside a 3-layer fire suit. So it gets very, very hot in there. Those are conditioned athletes. I mean, it takes
no doubt about
a while to get used to that type of stuff. And they might start hydrating 2 to 3 hours prior to the race, just getting moisture into their system. It's nothing to just ignore. We've got an excellent ER staff, and we just soon not see you, because something very preventable. Just make sure you hydrate if you're going to be working out in these temperatures. Cool down, take a break, get in the shade, go in the house. If you don't have air conditioning, a good thing to do is get a towel, get it wet, put it around your neck, and get a fan blowing on you. It starts that evaporation process, which will cool you down. So, again, be aware of the heat. Watch for those signs of the symptoms of heat stroke, heat exhaustion.
Good advice today. And I know the Woodlawn Hospital Board of Trustees in session earlier this week, right?
Yes, we met on Monday, kind of
Okay.
moved it up one day, had some conflicts with some schedules, so we went ahead and met Monday. So it's got me all thrown off. I was wanting to come here yesterday. I'm used to coming here right after the board
We
meeting.
still would have made you feel welcome.
Okay, good, good. Again, not a lot going on right now. It's kind of the summer doldrums. Not real busy at the hospital, unfortunately. But we did talk about a few issues. About 6 months ago, we instituted a new process for how do we communicate within the hospital. For years and years and decades, we've always used pagers. Well, it's to the point now you can't find pagers. It's just a technology that's gone by the wayside. So we've made that conversion over to cell phones. So it's been interesting. How can we do that on a secured environment? Because of the cell phones is going over the airways, a little different than pager technology. We had to make sure that whatever we transmitted from a physician to a staff member was protected. So going through that process now, there's everybody knows about the apps. Well, there's an app out there that we can encrypt that data. So when it's transmitted via text from our staff to a physician or vice versa, it is an encrypted message, and then when it gets to the other end, the receiving end, it gets unencrypted at that point. So working on that. The other thing that's kind of neat about this process, if you're a patient, you push your call light. Used to it went to a central board, and somebody would say, "Can I help you? Let me try to find your nurse," and that process. Now when they push the call light, it goes straight to a cell phone on that nurse's hip. So she can actually talk to you immediately instead of us trying to find where the nurse is for a particular patient. So trying to move, to that new technology, and us old guys, boy, it's hard, some of this stuff. But, long term, I think it's going to be very beneficial to the patient, much more ease of communication between patient and their nurse, and between staff and physicians. So really looking, as we move forward with that. So it's kind of this 6 months ago we started it. I think we're in the final phases. Hopefully in the next month or so we'll have everything in place, all the departments involved, everybody will have their cell phones, so that we can really increase our capability to communicate internally and externally.
Okay, excellent.
The other thing we were kind of looking at, with the Affordable Care Act, there's some changes coming, next couple of years on what type of benefit plans an employer can offer to their employees. And upon reviewing our plan, we kind of think it's called a Cadillac plan, and there's a penalty for having that, which means we're probably providing too good a plan. So we're starting that process now. Why wait until the last minute to start making those changes? So got a group coming in that's going to analyze what our current benefits are now, how that is going to relate to that Cadillac plan, and there's a fairly stiff penalty. It could be up to 40%. For us, that would be about $1 million penalty per year. I don't have an extra $1 million laying around to be able to, pay that penalty. So we are going to be revising, I think, and looking at starting next year some of our benefit plans, so we transition slowly into where we need to be by 2018. So, it sounds like a long way off, but when you're talking changing benefit plans, that's not that far off for us to start making changes now, because of you have to, post them for 60 days, 90 days. So it's a lot of paperwork involved to make some changes. So we're going to start that process now. First year, make some subtle changes, and then just gradually work into where we need to be to avoid having to pay the penalty as we move into 2018.
Okay.
A lot of folks are saying, well, it might go away by then. I'd rather be prepared now and not have to scramble at the last minute trying to make the necessary changes. The other thing we got into, we actually then finally got into the financial report for June.
Okay.
Again, hitting our slow time. June, July, August is usually those months where we really are struggling. We don't have a lot of activity. Revenue for the month was just a little over $10 million. We wrote off a little over $6 million. So we're staying right at that 60% of what we bill we're having to write off, either through arrangements with insurance companies, the discounts we have to offer them, or the compassionate care, or the bad debts where folks just aren't paying their bills. So we're right at 60% on that. Operating expenses was just right around $4 million, so we did have a $211,000 loss for the month. We'd budgeted a small loss, knowing this time of year it gets slow. Anticipating July and August to be the same thing. Probably looking at some months there where we're not going to be in the black, be in the red again. Long term, though, as we look to year end, hoping to be back on that positive side as we close out the year in December. And part of the thing also now, we're getting to budget for next year. So we just kind of primed the board a little bit. One of the concerns that we got to be very aware of, unfortunately, is with the announcement of Dean's ceasing operations here in town, that will have a dramatic financial impact not only on the hospital but on the community. There's some going to be downstream. So when you look at, I think there was 138 jobs, if I remember correctly, out there.
That's correct.
There's going to be more than that affected because of the downstream. Whenever you start pulling that large of a payroll out of a community, there's a multiplier effect. So basically, for every dollar that they pay in payroll, it multiplies throughout a community up to 3 to 4 times. So we realize that is going to be an effect, as we look into next year, that, we got to really plan and budget for that, knowing that, right now we anticipate just the economic effect on the hospital could be up to $900,000 per year off of our bottom line because of the employees of Dean's, assuming they all leave town, all lose insurance. I'd rather go with a worst case scenario and budget for that. And hopefully we'll be able to find some jobs for the folks here and be able to keep them in the community. But that's a lot of jobs to absorb into a community. So we're hoping that something comes out of it between now and the first of next year, and maybe excuse me, save some of those jobs.
Okay. President John Alley, John, President and CEO of Woodlawn Hospital, bringing us up to date on the trustees meeting that was held Monday.
And that was kind of the board meeting. Again, looking to next year, kind of looking at that crystal ball. What's going to happen and what changes are we going to have to make as we move forward with knowing there could be reduced reimbursement from government payers, increased demand by our patients on new technology and new services. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. We're being asked to provide more and more, getting paid less and less to do it. And how do you manage that? How do you make it so it's a win-win for everybody?
I think the last time we were here, John, we had this visit, we talked about the dining room and kitchen being closed for a while. Is that work all
It's
finished
all
now?
done, back
Okay.
open. The staff is glad to be back home. Can't say enough the outstanding job they did. Moved them off-site to provide the meals for all of our patients. No, it wasn't an easy job. They were doing a lot of driving back and forth and transmitting, food back and forth. Great job done by them, but boy, they're happy to be back home and kind of have it back centrally located again.
John, I had occasion yesterday to visit the what was the Fulton County Medical Clinic, is now Woodlawn's Medical Clinic in downtown Rochester, and one of the things they were talking with me about is the Woodlawn app and what you can do with that as far as your medical records go and those types of things.
Yeah, we're being required from the transparency now. You have to have access to your medical record anywhere you go. So we're in the process of making all that electronic, and so if you happen to vacation in Florida in the winter, you'll be able to get those records. Or if a physician down there says, hey, I need to know what you were doing when you were in Rochester, again, that allows them to get into our system, look at your medical record, look, your medications, whatever you might have going on. So when you are off-site, it's kind of like being at home as far as your records. They can follow you where you go. Very new into it. It's still working the bugs out. It's like anything else. It takes a while to get that thing tweaked to work exactly how we like it to work. But again, getting there, exciting technology. It's 20 years ago when you start thinking about this, you would have laughed saying, "Oh, that'll never happen." We're getting there.
Can you gauge how many people are taking advantage of that?
Boy, you're asking a technical question
Well,
on that. I think that we can track the amount of hits, for lack
Okay.
of a better term.
Okay.
I know when you talk about websites, you can track
Right.
hits to that. I'm pretty sure we've got the capability within that app to say how many people have accessed that and say, okay, we've got this or that. X number of people are looking at that, downloading their information, or making it available for them.
Even if I'm not traveling, that would be a handy thing to have, wouldn't
Oh
it?
yes, yeah. You can do. They're trying to teach me how to use it. And again, if I can learn how to do it, trust me, anybody can. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer when it comes to all this new technology. But you can go out there and get lab reports. You can get your radiology reports. Certain medical notes that's been made into your record by your physician. So if you're at the family reunion, you say, weren't you having some work done? You can bring it up, and you can look really intelligent talking to those folks, because a lot of that information is going to be out there for you to be able to get at. We call it our portal, the patient
Okay.
portal.
Any equipment needs coming up for Woodlawn?
I hope we're done for a while.
Okay.
Other than some emergent needs, we try to anticipate as we look at equipment, is it becoming close to the end of its useful life? And we go to the manufacturer and say, if we've got this XYZ piece of equipment, from your perspective, how long should we expect that thing to be able to use it? We don't want to go out every 3 years and just replace everything. That's not the prudent, wise thing to do. But as we start looking at equipment, manufacturers are pretty good, and then we've got an independent firm that we work with, do our biomedical preventive maintenance and repairs. They're good. Say, this equipment now, next year will be the last year that the manufacturer will guarantee that you have parts available for it. It might still be a very good working piece of equipment, but once we start getting that notification that parts aren't going to be available past this date, then it's time for us to start looking. We need to replace that, because what you don't want to get into that position was, oh, let's keep it another 2 years, it breaks, you need it, and there's no parts available. So we're fairly proactive at trying to predict what items do we know are going to come off from the parts available list, and then start replacing those.
John, as we kind of wrap this up today, I think one of the neatest things that's happened to Woodlawn, and it came down, I think, 2 or 3 months ago, but was the CMS rating.
Yes.
And I know a lot of folks have been talking about that, but that's a very impressive thing.
It is. That's not something we can control either, other than treating people like they should be treated. It's a totally independent research done by the federal government. Do phone interviews of patients that has been in our facility, and to be rated 5-star, that means we're the best of the best. And when you look statewide, only 10 hospitals make that, and we've got some fairly outstanding medical facilities in the state of Indiana that didn't make that 5-star rating. Across the country, again, we're top percentile there. That tells a lot about what our staff does, and it's all the staff. We kind of say, here's how we want you to treat the people, but it's up to them to do it. And to me, it validates what I've asked them to do. And when I get that, it was kind of a surprise. We knew we were doing pretty good because we get quarterly reports, but to come out and say, you got the 5-star rating, that was pretty impressive. And it's going to be hard to maintain. As each year they raise that bar a little higher. You can be really good, they're going to raise the bar, and next year you got to be better. So that's our stride. We want to try to maintain that. I'm hoping we do. We're working very hard to maintain that 5-star rating, but it's going to be difficult. We're going to have to work hard to do it. But I'm just so proud of the staff and everybody. We say here's our goal, and they did it. They got us where we wanted to be, and it's just how they treat people. It's the perception when you come into our facility, how did we treat you? And we think we might be doing a really good job, but if you don't think that, then we're not. So we've got to make sure we're meeting the patients' and visitors' expectations. Hard job to do, and they're doing an outstanding job.
John Alley, President and CEO, Woodlawn Hospital. Have we pretty well covered it today?
I think we've got everything covered for today.
Thank you for coming in. Thank you for the hospital report, and thank you for all the good that Woodlawn does for our entire area.
Well, it all goes to the staff. I'm only as good as who I put around me, and I've got some very good people making me look really good.
John Alley, thank you very much.
Thank you.